Most people think the night shift is boring. A few hours of silence, a few lonely customers, and then you go home. But the people in tonight's stories learn something terrifying. When the rest of the world goes to sleep, some things wake up. The stories you're about to hear come from people who worked alone after closing time. Security guards, cashiers, janitors, warehouse workers, hotel clerks, and every one of them experienced something they still can't explain. Some heard voices, some saw people who shouldn't have been there, and one of them was followed home by something that wasn't human. So lock your doors, turn down the lights, and let's begin. Story 1. The Last Customer. I worked the closing shift at a small convenience store outside town. The nearest neighborhood was almost 15 minutes away. At night, the road outside became completely empty. Most nights were uneventful. One Tuesday, I was alone. My co-worker had called in sick. At 11:45 p.m., I locked the front doors. The store officially closed at midnight. I began counting cash registers. Everything felt normal. Until I heard the automatic door chime. Ding. I looked up. Nobody was there. The doors remained closed. I walked over. Nothing. Parking lot empty. No cars, no people. I shrugged it off. A few minutes later, ding. The same sound. This time I checked the security monitor. Again. Nothing. Every camera showed an empty store, an empty parking lot. Then I noticed something strange. Camera 4. The aisle containing canned foods. For just a split second, someone seemed to be standing there. Tall, motionless, watching. I blinked. The figure was gone. I assumed my eyes were tired. Then one of the shelves collapsed. Cans crashed onto the floor. I jumped. Nobody was near it. Nobody could have touched it. My heart was racing. I picked up the cans and decided to finish quickly. At 12:20 a.m. I headed toward the back storage room and heard footsteps. Slow, heavy. Walking through the aisles, I froze. The footsteps stopped, then started again, closer. I grabbed a flashlight and searched every aisle. Nothing. No one. But when I reached the beverage section, every refrigerator door was standing open. Every single one. I knew they had all been closed 10 minutes earlier. I locked up and left immediately. The next day I checked the security footage. At exactly 12:18 a.m., camera 4 captured a tall figure standing in the canned food aisle. The figure remained there for 37 seconds, then vanished. No camera showed it leaving. I quit 2 weeks later. Story 2. The Empty Hotel Room. For 3 years I worked night reception at a roadside motel. One room had a reputation, room 214. Guests constantly complained about noises, knocking, whispers, footsteps. Management blamed old plumbing. One winter night, every room was occupied except 214. At around 2:30 a.m., the phone rang. The caller ID showed room 214. I answered. Silence, then static, then a woman's voice, very quietly. "Please help me." The line disconnected. I stared at the screen. Room 214 was vacant. Nobody had checked in. I thought maybe the system malfunctioned. 10 minutes later, it rang again. Room 214. I answered. This time I heard crying, then a loud bang. The line went dead. I grabbed the master key. My stomach felt sick. The hallway leading to 214 seemed colder than usual. I reached the door, knocked. No answer. Unlocked it. The room was empty, completely empty. No luggage, no people. Nothing. But the bathroom light was on. I walked toward it. The mirror was covered in steam, as though someone had just taken a shower. Written across the fogged glass were 3 words, "Don't look back." I spun around. Nobody. I left immediately. The next morning, the mirror was clean. Management said there had never been writing. I never answered calls from room 214 again. Story 3. The Warehouse Camera. A friend got me a job working overnight security at a distribution warehouse. My job was simple. Sit in a small office, watch cameras. Patrol every 2 hours. Easy money. Or so I thought. Around 3 a.m. I noticed movement on camera 11. A person stood between shelves. They weren't wearing an employee uniform. I zoomed in. The figure appeared extremely tall, at least 7 feet. I radioed another guard. Nobody responded. I assumed he was on patrol. The figure disappeared, then appeared on camera 14, then camera 17, then camera 22. Each camera was hundreds of feet apart. No human could move that quickly. I decided to investigate. Bad idea. The warehouse felt different at night. Huge, silent, endless rows of shelves. My flashlight barely reached the far corners. Then I heard breathing, not mine, something else. Slow, heavy, directly behind me. I spun around. Nothing. The breathing stopped. I returned to the office. The other guard was waiting there. He looked pale. Before I could speak, he asked, "Did you see it too?" Apparently, he'd seen the same figure, on the opposite side of the warehouse, at the exact same time. Neither of us finished our shift. Story 4. The Janitor's Hallway. A high school hired me as a night janitor during summer break. The building was completely empty. No students, no teachers, just me. Every night I cleaned the same hallway, the science wing. One evening I heard lockers slamming, bang, 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 one after another. I assumed a window was open. When I checked, every window was closed. The hallway became silent. Then I heard laughter, children laughing, far away, echoing through empty classrooms. The sound made no sense. School was closed for summer. I followed the noise. It led me toward the basement staircase. The laughter stopped. A door at the bottom slowly creaked open by itself. I stood frozen. Then something rolled out of the darkness, a red rubber ball. It stopped at my feet. I stared at it, then heard a child's voice from downstairs, soft, barely audible. "Can you throw it back?" I ran. I didn't stop running until I reached the parking lot. The next morning I returned with my supervisor. The basement was empty, but the red ball was sitting perfectly in the center of the hallway, exactly where I'd left it. And that wasn't the last strange thing that happened in that school, because what another employee saw there a week later was far worse. Story 5. The Hospital Elevator. The oldest hospital in our city had 7 floors. Officially. At least that's what the public believed. I worked overnight maintenance there for nearly 2 years. Most nights involved fixing lights, checking generators, and responding to maintenance requests. One night around 2:15 a.m. I received a call. The nurse sounded nervous. The elevator stopped again. I grabbed my tools and headed over. The elevator doors were open, empty. No patients, no staff, nothing unusual. I stepped inside, pressed floor 5. The doors closed. The elevator began moving. Then something strange happened. The display showed floor 6, then floor 7, then floor 8. I frowned. There was no floor 8. The elevator continued climbing. Floor 9. My stomach dropped. The lights flickered. The elevator finally stopped. The doors slowly opened. Beyond them was darkness. Not a hallway, not a room, just darkness. I couldn't see where the floor ended. The air felt ice cold. Then I heard footsteps. Walking toward the elevator, slow, dragging. I immediately slammed the closed door button. Nothing happened. The footsteps got closer, closer, closer. Then I saw a silhouette emerge from the darkness. Tall, thin, wrong. Its head almost touched the ceiling. The doors finally closed. The elevator dropped so suddenly I nearly fell. When it stopped, I was back on floor 1. The security footage later showed the elevator never moved above floor 7, but I know what I saw, and I never used that elevator alone again. Story 6. The Gas Station Man. I worked nights at a 24-hour gas station beside a highway. Most customers were truck drivers. The shift was usually quiet. One rainy night around 3 a.m., a man walked in. Something felt off immediately. He wasn't wet, despite the heavy rain. His clothes looked old, almost decades old. He silently purchased a bottle of water. When I told him the total, he didn't respond, just stared. His eyes never blinked. Finally, he handed me money. The bills were strange, extremely old. Old enough that they weren't accepted anymore. I looked up. The man smiled, a smile far too wide. Then he walked out. I watched through the window. Instead of heading toward a vehicle, he crossed the road, straight into a wooded area. I assumed he was homeless. Until an hour later, a truck driver entered the station. He noticed I looked nervous. After hearing my story, his face turned pale. He pointed toward an old newspaper clipping hanging on the wall. The article was nearly 30 years old. A hitchhiker had died on that highway, hit by a truck during a storm. The photograph showed the victim. Same clothes, same face, same smile. I quit shortly after. Story 7. The security guard's final patrol. My uncle worked security at an abandoned shopping mall scheduled for demolition. The building had been empty for years. Most nights involved checking doors and ensuring nobody broke in. One night he started his final patrol at midnight. Everything seemed normal. At first. Then he noticed a light. One store was illuminated. That shouldn't have been possible. The electricity had been disconnected months earlier. He approached carefully. The store was an old toy shop. As he neared the entrance, he heard music, a children's song, playing softly. Inside, dozens of toys sat perfectly arranged, as though waiting for customers. My uncle radioed headquarters. No answer. His flashlight suddenly died. The music stopped. Then every toy in the store turned toward him. At once, every doll, every teddy bear, every mannequin, facing him, watching. He backed away. Something moved inside the darkness behind the checkout counter. A shape slowly stood up, far taller than any human. Its head scraped the ceiling. My uncle ran. When he reached the security office, he checked the cameras. The toy store appeared completely empty. No lights, no toys, no figure, nothing. He retired 2 days later and refused to ever discuss that night again. Story 8. The office building. A friend convinced me to take an overnight cleaning job in a downtown office tower. 30 floors, hundreds of empty offices. After midnight, the entire building became silent. One Friday night, I was assigned to floor 27. The floor had recently been vacated. No employees remained. Around 1:40 a.m., I noticed a light on in one office. Strange, the entire floor should have been empty. I walked over. The office contained only a desk, a chair, and an old computer. The monitor was on, displaying security footage, not live footage, footage of me, cleaning. Earlier that night, I stared in confusion. The timestamp showed 11:12 p.m., then the footage changed. Now it showed me at 12:03 a.m., then 12:47 a.m. Each clip displayed moments from earlier in the night, moments nobody should have recorded. Then the footage changed again. This time it showed me standing exactly where I was, looking at the monitor. The timestamp read 2:16 a.m., nearly 30 minutes in the future. In the footage, I suddenly looked behind me, my face filled with terror. Then the video cut to static. A chill ran through my body. Slowly, I turned around. The office behind me was empty, but I could hear breathing, very close, right beside my ear. I dropped everything and ran toward the elevator. As the doors closed, I looked back. A dark figure stood inside the office, watching me leave. And that was only the beginning, because the next stories involve people who didn't get away so easily. Story 9. The Night Shift Nurse. For nearly 5 years, I worked the overnight shift in a nursing home. Most residents slept through the night. The halls were usually quiet. At around 3 a.m., I began my routine room checks. Everything seemed normal until I reached room 108. The resident assigned there had passed away 3 days earlier. The room was empty, waiting for a new occupant. As I walked past, I heard the call bell. Ding. I froze. The call light above room 108 was glowing red. I opened the door. Nobody inside. The bed was perfectly made. The room was silent. I reset the call system and left. 30 minutes later, it happened again. Ding. Room 108. Again. This time, I checked the computer logs. The call button had definitely been pressed. Not a malfunction. Pressed. By someone. The third time it happened, I entered the room and immediately noticed something different. The rocking chair in the corner was moving. Slowly. Back and forth, back and forth. No windows were open. No air conditioning vent pointed toward it. I stood there watching. Then the chair stopped. A voice whispered from directly behind me. "Thank you for coming." I ran from the room. The next morning I learned something unsettling. The resident who had occupied room 108 always pressed the call button several times every night. At exactly the same times the alerts appeared. Story 10. The warehouse basement. I got a temporary job working nights in an old warehouse scheduled for renovation. The building was over 80 years old. Most employees avoided the basement. Nobody ever explained why. One evening, I was assigned to inventory old storage rooms downstairs. The basement stretched far beneath the building. Concrete walls, long corridors, rows of abandoned rooms. The deeper I went, the colder it became. Around midnight, I discovered a locked steel door. Unlike everything else downstairs, it looked newer. Someone had intentionally sealed it. Curiosity got the better of me. The key hanging nearby fit perfectly. The door opened with a loud groan. Inside was a massive, empty room. No furniture, no equipment, nothing. Except dozens of names scratched into the walls. Hundreds of names, covering every surface. Some looked decades old. Some appeared recent. At the center of the room sat a single wooden chair, facing the wall. I stepped closer, then noticed fresh writing, written in dust on the floor. One sentence. "Don't sit down." A loud bang echoed behind me. The steel door slammed shut. The room instantly became freezing. I rushed to the door. Locked. Then I heard movement. Not outside. Inside the room. Something shuffled behind me. Slowly. I never turned around. I kicked the door repeatedly until it finally opened. When I escaped, I reported everything. Management later told me the room didn't officially exist on any blueprint. Story 11. The motel hallway. I worked overnight at an isolated roadside motel. Most guests stayed only one night. One winter evening, every room was occupied except room 17. The room had been closed for years due to plumbing issues. At least that's what management claimed. At around 2:45 a.m., a guest approached the front desk. He looked shaken. He said someone had been walking outside his room for over an hour, back and forth, dragging their feet. I grabbed a flashlight and checked. The hallway was empty, but I noticed something strange. The footprints on the dusty carpet led directly to room 17. They stopped at the door. No return footprints, no exit. Nothing. The footprints simply ended. I called management. They told me not to open room 17. Their exact words were, "If you hear anything, ignore it." That wasn't reassuring. 10 minutes later, I heard knocking. 3 slow knocks, coming from inside room 17. The room was supposed to be empty. Then the phone at the front desk rang. Caller ID, room 17. I answered. A woman's voice whispered, "He's still here." The line disconnected. I never worked another overnight shift there. Story 12. The highway rest stop. A friend of mine worked maintenance at a remote highway rest stop. The nearest town was nearly 40 minutes away. After midnight, traffic almost disappeared. One stormy night, he was cleaning the restroom building when he noticed a vehicle parked outside. A black sedan. No lights, no visible occupants. Hours passed. The car never moved. At around 3 a.m., he walked outside to investigate. The windows were too dark to see through. He knocked. No response. He checked the license plate. The registration sticker was more than 20 years old. That alone felt odd. Then he looked through the windshield. The driver's seat was empty. The passenger seat was empty. Nobody inside. Yet the engine was running. He backed away. At that exact moment, the radio inside the car turned on. Static filled the air. Then a voice emerged, distorted, weak. "Help me." My friend ran inside. He called the police. When officers arrived 20 minutes later, the sedan was gone. No tire tracks, no evidence it had ever been there. One officer became visibly uncomfortable after hearing the description. Years earlier, a black sedan matching that exact vehicle had disappeared from the highway during a storm. Neither the driver nor the car were ever found, until that night. Story 13. Something followed me home. This is the story that made me quit night shifts forever. I worked alone as overnight security for a large office complex. The property consisted of several buildings connected by parking structures. Most nights were quiet. Then came the night I saw the woman. At 2:17 a.m., camera 6 detected movement. A woman stood in the parking garage, motionless, facing the camera. I zoomed in. She appeared pale, extremely pale. Her head tilted slightly sideways. I radioed the patrol team. No answer, so I went to investigate. By the time I arrived, the garage was empty. Nobody there. I searched every level. Nothing. When I returned to the security office, the woman appeared on another camera. Building C, 300 meters away. Impossible. I rushed there. Again, nobody. This continued for nearly an hour. Each time she appeared somewhere new. Always standing still. Always watching. At 4 a.m. I finally saw her in person. Not through a camera, not through a monitor. Directly ahead of me. Standing at the far end of a corridor. I couldn't make out her face, only her silhouette. Then she began walking toward me. Slowly. Not running, not rushing. Just walking. Something about her movement felt wrong, like a puppet being pulled forward. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until sunrise. When my shift ended, I drove home. Exhausted, relieved, certain it was over. That night I woke around 3 a.m. A noise had awakened me. Tap, 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 coming from outside my bedroom window. I pulled the curtain aside and saw her, standing in my backyard, perfectly still, watching. I moved away 2 months later. But sometimes when I wake in the middle of the night, I still feel like someone is standing outside, waiting, watching, and hoping I look out the window again. Those were 13 terrifying night shift horror stories that happened after closing time. Which story disturbed you the most? Was it the mysterious woman in the parking garage, the impossible elevator, the empty motel room, or the voice that came from a room that should have been vacant? Let me know in the comments below. And if you work night shifts yourself, share your creepiest experience. Your story might appear in a future video. If you enjoyed tonight's collection of scary stories, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another journey into the dark. Until next time, check your locks, look over your shoulder, and remember, some things don't wait for midnight to find you.